In this video, we're going to look into how we go about creating a somewhat realistic looking skin in Maya. And so far, what we've done is, we modeled a character and we've unwrapped them, and we've used actual photo reference to be able to get this look that we have going on right now. Uh, but the thing about real skin is that it's actually translucent. By translucent it means that light can actually absorb some of the light and it goes kind of through it, and and again that's an effect that you most likely would see in areas like the ears and your fingers, and you can kind of maybe fake a little bit of that by adding like a little bit of red to certain areas like the ear and the nose and stuff like that. But we're going to be looking into a Maya mental ray material that actually simulates this translucency. So I'm going to go ahead into my hypershade, and I'm going to go into my list here, and I want to make sure that I'm on the mental ray. And again, you're not gonna see this if you don't have mental ray turned on for your Maya. And I'm gonna click on the MISSS Fast Skin Maya, and I'm gonna click on that. Okay. And I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna assign it into my model, and just by dragging it onto it. Okay. And now you should be seeing a red type of material here. The only reason you're seeing a black and white right now, it's because I have my viewport 2.0 turned on, but I'm going to change it back to default, and you should be seeing something like this. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off everything else, but my body. Okay, so this is all I want to have. So this is our body right now. And I want to go ahead and do a quick render. Again, hopefully this doesn't take too long. Just a couple seconds. Alright, and by default you should get this kind of waxy type of material onto your character or whatever it is that you will assign it to. So that means that we're going to have to go into material and make a couple of tweaks ourselves. And another thing that I'm going to do, and again this is just to test how the skin is kind of interpreting the light and everything like that, it's actually create a simple 3-point light rig for this model. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my lights and do start with a point light. Okay, and this is going to be my backlight. Okay, and I'm going to go here into my lights, and I'm going to be creating a, let's see, spotlight. Okay, again I'm going to need to maybe make these a little bigger than what they are. And to set this one up, I'm going to look through select it, and alright, this point light is going to be kind of looking down on our character, and it's going to be the main source of light and shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one, which is the point light that I put in the background, and I'm going to go into shadows and I'm going to turn them off. Alright, and again this one's just kind of supposed to kind of create a highlight on the edges of our character. Probably click on 7 so I can see the effects on my lights on the viewport as well. I'm going to select this slide, and I can just kind of widen that cone angle, maybe move it back a bit. So again, it's just a lot easier to just kind of move back like this. Alright, and I want this one to be the main source of light. And then I'm going to create a fill, and I'm just going to create another spotlight like this one. So I'm going to go to create light spot. It's going to be right there. Scale it up a bit so I can see it. Go through, look through, select it. Alright, and okay, let's just go back to my light. And this one I want to again, it's supposed to be a fill light, so it's going to be looking kind of from down up to our character. And it actually needs to be softer than a main light. So I'm just going to go into the attributes. Going to increase that cone angle. Maybe decrease this to about half of what this one is going to be. I'm going to make this one 0.75, and this one can stay as 1. And again, I got to make sure that I turn my shadows on this one as well. Okay, so another thing that I want to do is also set up a camera. And again, I'm using my light here, so I shouldn't be doing that. Okay. And I want to get out of here, going to my perspective. Then I'm going to go into create camera. Alright, and same thing, I want to look through it so I can set up the shot for my render. And again, my main light's kind of coming from this side, so I probably want to have it somewhere around here. Alright, and again, I'm just going to go ahead and contrast what I had originally there with a new render. So I could save this one and just go ahead and render this real quick. It's just going to take a couple seconds. If not, I'll be okay. So it's going to render in the whole thing now. So I want to make sure that I go to render and select the camera that I want to render from. Alright, so this is what we got going on. And again, we have that backlight that's kind of creating a little bit of a nice rim around it. And okay, so one of the things that you notice when you create this, when you assign this material, is that whatever you assign it to is gonna be kind of pretty waxy. It's not gonna look. It looks interesting, it looks nice, but it's not accurate, and it looks a little waxy. So we're going to need to go into this new material that we assigned to this. We're going to have to play around with the settings a little bit. Now, again, the way that this material works is kind of the same way that our own skin works, in which we basically our skin actually has 3 layers. It has the epidermal scatter color, which is basically what you see on top. Then you have a subdermal scatter color, which is what's right underneath, and then the backscatter color, which is red, and that's usually kind of what you see on areas that are very translucent, like your ears, areas that have cartilage and lips and things like that. But one of the reasons why it looks so fake to begin with is that, and again, these settings are technically correct. What the fast skin shader does is that it basically saying that this is how much the epidermal scatter radius and the subdermal scatter radius, and same as the back scatters. What it's saying is how much the light actually goes through them before it kind of either goes through or bounces out. So one of the things about this is that it's actually set up on millimeters. The problem is that our scene is actually set up on either, depending on how you're working on this, it could be in meters or in feet. So you have to go through the process of either subtracting the amount of radius of scatter that it has, so the light pretty much doesn't kind of go through it and makes it look all waxy. Through these epidermal scatter radius, or you need to go to the algorithm control. Alright, and the scale conversion, again, right now it's at 1, meaning that this is basically saying that the light's kind of going through, again, 25 kind of millimeters, and then kind of either bouncing back out or going through. And if we're looking at this number in the context of feet, which is what my scene, that's the scale system that I'm using. It's way too much, because then it's not saying these are millimeters. This could be potentially feet or meters. So we need to increase the scale conversion, so it's subdividing these by either 10 or 20. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and show you this is what we have right now. And if I increase this to something like 10, I think I'm gonna have to go higher than that. But I'm just gonna go ahead and again come here. So let's just save this render so we can make a comparison and then do another render. I'm going to do an AO render so it doesn't have to render the whole thing. Again, this shouldn't take too long just yet. Alright, so again, we're seeing a little bit of a difference in how much the scattering it's kind of again, doesn't look as waxy. Another thing that we got to keep in mind, again, the specularity on this can be a factor also on the waxiness. So you either gonna have to either bring this down or either turn it off kind of altogether, so you can kind of play around with these colors first until you get something that's more natural. Again, we're seeing again in areas that are kind of very thin or cartilage, like our ears or nose and our ears, we're getting nice kind of red areas. And again, you in real life you would see that because again, they're more translucent than areas that are thicker in other areas of our body. So seeing red in our arms like this would be incorrect. Seeing red around our ears and around our eyes like this is correct. Another areas where you would want to see something like this would be around your fingers as well. And again, the scale conversion, again, if it's going up by 10, it's not good enough. Another thing that you can do is increase that. I'm going to increase this by a little bit to see if it gives me a little bit better results. And I'm going to maybe bring down the I brought down the specularity all the way down. So again, I want to see what changes that made. Alright. So again, I'm starting to see really nice kind of areas here around the thin kind of scare areas. And again, I want to see that in those areas, but not here, because then it's going to look a little bit way too pink. So another thing that we're noticing in my render, and again, I don't know if you can see this on your screen, but is that I'm starting to see a little bit of kind of noise on my render. And again, the reason for that, let's see, texturing, is because the light map that's kind of being linked up to our material doesn't have enough samples. So you usually want to be somewhere higher than this. I'm going to start with a 512 map, okay? And again, if I go ahead and render this up, I'm just going to go ahead and render the whole frame. It's going to take a couple seconds. It should, having higher samples, it should clear up any noise problems that you might have on your scene. But again, keep remembering that these changes are expensive and sometimes might increase your rendering time by a little bit. Just going to go back to this, the scale conversion. I'm actually going to keep this at 10. I actually liked it a little bit better. Okay. Okay, and another thing that I'm going to do with these maps, again, now that I have something that I kind of think it works, and again, it's kind of, eye of the beholder. If you want to keep playing with your settings, you can go ahead and keep kind of messing around with them. Is that we are going to be using actual maps that are kind of based on the original diffuse map that I had assigned on my character, to be able to bring a little bit more realism into my subsurface scattering layer. All right, and again, what you're seeing here, these are not only numbers that are kind of accurate to how skin kind of behaves in the real world. And again, one of the things that you got to keep in mind is that this is based on real world scale. So again, depending on what measurements you're using, in your scene, this is gonna have to change. And another thing in mind that you need to keep in mind is that the weight is actually, again, something that you can kind of change. So if you wanted the backscatter or that redness to actually be a little bit stronger, you would actually go and increase the weight from from 0.5 to something like 1, and you would actually see an increase, or at least on the strength of those colors. And again, I'm just going to make a quick area render of that. And again, just by increasing the scatter weight to 1, you can see that some of these areas are a lot stronger. But again, that might be a little bit too much. So I'm actually going to bring this back to what it was by default. And I'm going to be using something similar to these colors as the basis for the maps that I'm going to bring in. And so I'm going to go ahead and open my Photoshop file and just show you what I ended up producing. And let's again. Just trying to find my maps here. Okay, and I have a Photoshop file with a series of different files, different versions of the maps, and just kind of turn this off for now. The bump. So we start with something. This is the diffuse map that I was using before I went into the skin shader. But now, and as you can see, I have a bunch of maps that are kind of based on the colors that you would use, or that you would see here on the scatter color. Alright, so again, it goes from something that's somewhat cool to warm to warmest, and you know, if you want to bring more kind of skin detail to your models, you know, it's advisable that you use that initial diffuse map to be able to bring those in. So the epidermal, again, basically the same as my diffuse map, but then you'd have to actually have to go to something like hue and saturation and just bring the saturation down, so you would have to so you would get somewhat of a cooler color. Okay, and then again, the subdermal, this one's something that needs to be a lot warmer than what our epidermal is, and again, this is the second layer of our skin. So again, that was just a matter of going into my diffuse and either playing with my color balance, you know, bringing everything up to red, so you can kind of here, I guess I can show you. Just gonna make a copy of this. Let's play around with this for a little bit. For that one, will be a matter of going into the color balance and bringing it kind of all the way to red. Alright, and even going into your hue and saturation and playing around with these colors. And then again, the last one will pretty much be doing the same thing. You know, having already the subdermal, it will be just a matter of bringing this one and turning even more red. A couple other maps that you need to keep in mind is the color of your specular color. And again, the nice thing about the skin shader is that it actually gives you an idea of what it kind of needs to be. So again, these are somewhat warm colors, but you know, this one's a lot cooler than warm and a lot warmer. The specular color, you want this to be, again, kind of based on diffuse, but more of a cool color. And then the secondary color, it most likely be that kind of gray scale of gray that you would usually see for bump maps and stuff like that, or something similar to that. And that's kind of what I have here. Again, my specular color, it's just a little bit cooler than my epidermal, and then I have a specular. And again, just like the bump mapping, anything that's white or somewhat gray is going to show some specularity to it, everything that is black is not gonna have any specularity to it. um, let's see. So I'm just gonna bring this back down, and I'm gonna start assigning some of these maps to this specific shader. And again, I'm gonna go ahead and just do this. Alright. So again, it looks very flat, very kind of zombie-like at this moment. So the skin share is not gonna work just by itself. So based on the maps that I created in Photoshop, I'm gonna start bringing some of those images here. So for the epidermal, again, we wanna make sure that we select a file for that, and go into our folder, and just gotta find my textures here. So again, I have kind of these already labeled, so I want to bring the epidermal. Okay, so that's already kind of been assigned to my character here, and I can make a test to see what that looks like by itself. Again, you can still come here and change the amount of scatter weight, you know, if you don't want your skin to be as cool. But again, you kind of start seeing a difference here. Alright, so that's our first map. Then we're going to bring the subdermal. So same thing, I click on the checkerboard, click on File, go to the image name, bring in the second one, this is the subdermal, and again this one is the second layer of our skin. And I can maybe save this image and do another. Okay, so again, you're starting to see quite a little bit of difference here. Our guy looks a little bit pale, and again, it's because he doesn't have the last, the backscatter color, which again needs to be that really warm color at the end. So again, click on the checkerboard, select the file, click here, and bring the backscatter. Okay, and again I can save this, do another render. Okay, and we're seeing a little bit of a change there. Okay. Alright, and a couple more things that we need to do here for this to kind of look somewhat correct. Let's see, we have all our surface scatter layers assigned colors. We can also again, our skin by default, so you know, it is somewhat specular, so we do want to bring a little bit of specularity, otherwise it's going to look very flat. But we also want to bring the maps that you would create for your specular color and your secondary specular color. So I'm going to go ahead and bring those in. And why didn't do anything? Okay, click on here, and this will be specular color, and again it's the one that's a little cooler. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring in the secondary specular color, which is the one that's grayscale as well. That's the specular. Okay. And again, I'm going to do a render. You're going to see a little bit of specularity, but you're going to be able to see also that, you know, our character is still going to look a little bit flat, a little bit, you know, maybe a little bit too pale. So again, that's when we want to go in here into our different weights, okay, and start assigning and start kind of playing around and see what kind of works better. Another trick that's used to be able to bring a little bit more color to our skin is to actually apply that original diffuse color that you created for his texture without this shader, and apply it into diffuse color. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply that. And want to go into, let's see, diffuse 2 is the one that I'm currently using. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and save this image right here just so I can make a contrast. Alright, and that brings a little bit of more kind of realistic look, not so flat and pale, into our character. And still, you can see in some areas, again, it might be a little bit too much, so we have to kind of play around with our settings, but we're seeing a more again, natural look around the ears in some of these areas that are supposed to be thinner. Another thing that you might want to do in an instance like this, if you have a bump map, definitely something you can bring in to add a little bit of detail to our shader here. So this has a slot for a bump, but it doesn't. It's not the kind that I can't just assign a file here, because then I wouldn't be able to adjust the amount of bump that I want to add. So I actually want to go, once I select the check mark into my bump, I want to go into my 2D textures, and actually not there. Just gonna go ahead and type bump. Let's see if I can find it then. 2D textures. I'm gonna pause this for 1 second. Okay, so again, I'm not sure why my bump 2D kind of disappeared there, but again, I just kind of clicked on the Maya here, type bump, and it should be these two types of bumps. The one that I'm going to be selecting is the bump 2D. Alright, and again, the one thing that you're going to see with this one is that it's going to give you a bump value and a bump depth. Okay, so you want to assign the material or your bump map to your bump value, and you're going to be using the bump depth to kind of change how deep your bump is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one, and this one needs to be an actual file here, alright, which is one of these. And then I'm going to go here and go into my textures and actually select my bump map. Alright, and again, I'm going to do a really quick test here. But again, one of the things that I'm going to warn you about is that my bump depth right here is at 1 right now. So this could technically get very deformed because of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and render the region. And again, one of the reasons why you're adding this bump to D before you add the image is because you want to be able to go into your bump depth and lower this down. As you can see, the bump map on our skin, it's very strong. So you want to bring this down something a lot lower. I'm doing 2.5. I'm thinking that might be a little bit too much still, but okay, so that's looking a lot better. And again, our skin is going to have a little bit of interest due to the bump map, and we have our different kind of layers of skin, so this is looking a lot nicer. Okay, And then alright, so that kind of concludes the tutorial on how to set up this kind of skin shader. And one of the things to keep in mind is that to my understanding, this shader only interacts with lights. So if you're ever in a situation where you want to use the skin shader, and if you want to use something like HDRI lights to set this up, it's not going to work very well. Especially because when you're in the process of creating an HDRI kind of lighting setup, one of the things that you got to do is remove your default lights, and when that happens, when you don't have any lights in your scene, this basically turns to black. So for this to work, you need to have some sort of light setup, like the 3-point light that we have set up for our guy here, or you could even attempt to use a little bit of indirect lighting by creating a physical sun and sky. And again, you know what? I'm just going to do a quick demonstration of what this would be like. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this. So again, just to kind of set up real quick, I'm going to go into the physical sun and sky, create it. Okay, that automatically is going to turn on our final gathering. These default settings are fine. Again, for this to render properly, one of the things that I need to do is that I need to make sure that everything that's being outputted, it's gamma corrected, otherwise it might be a little bit too bright. And again, I can do a quick demonstration of that. So let me just do a quick render here. And again, I'm probably gonna pause the video for a second here, so because this is gonna it's gonna start getting longer and longer. So I'm gonna pause the video. Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here. That basically our skin share is not interacting right with that skylight, and it also looks overly bright. So we want to make sure that we enable the color management, and you can either use some sort of linear color kind of workflow, or just make sure that this one is at a sRGB output, so it's color corrected at the end. Otherwise, this is not this is going to be too bright. Another thing that we want to do, again, because we don't want to overcompensate with our lights in the scene, is to make sure to enable our default lighting. Okay, and I don't need to increase my quality right now because I'm just kind of testing right now. And again, I want to see what these changes that I just made with the gamma correction and the and enabling the default light, but I think this problem that I'm having with this fake looking screen is still going to remain there. But again, I'm going to save this and I'm going to do another render, and I'm going to pause the video while this renders. Okay, and I'm back, and so you can see again, this is a little bit kind of overly bright, and again, one of the reasons for that is because our skylight by default is kind of pointing down, so this is at brightest in the morning, so we're going to have to move that light around a little bit, but it doesn't change the fact that our skin is kind of looking kind of very weird through this whole thing. So one of the things that you got to change in your fast skin shader here, it's in the same space where you change the scale conversion. You gotta make sure you check off the screen composite so it doesn't do this to your textures. So again, I'm gonna check this off and just see what the difference between the two it's going to be. Gonna save this image, start rendering, and pause the video. Alright, and again, you can see a clear difference of basically how our kind of skin is interacting with the light over what we had going on before. Alright, so again, and the only change that I made between these two was to make sure that I went into the algorithm control and make sure that screen composite was checked off. So the last thing that I'm going to do here is actually change where's my... Okay, so this is the light that was created for the sky. Okay, and again, I scaled it up just so I could see it. But one thing that you need to keep in mind is that position and scale does not really affect what this light does. Only rotation does. So I'm actually gonna set it up so it's not so bright, and I'm gonna set it up so the light's actually coming from the side. Another thing that might be making our scene overly bright is the fact that I have extra lights in here, and again, I don't need those because I have the physical sky right now. So I'm gonna go back into my panel, do another camera here. Okay, and I'm just gonna do one more render and see what results I get. I'm gonna save this image and click on render. I'm gonna pause the video. Alright, and again, these renders are not that expensive right now because the size of it is not too big. It's only 24 seconds. But again, just by rotating my light, I was able to change the intensity of the light that I have originally for this. And I definitely have skin that's natural looking, and again, the fact that I went and actually used variations of my diffuse texture to give these surface scattering layers a little bit more detail. It definitely pays off. So this concludes the lesson on the Maya Fastskin procedural texture, and on the next video we're gonna talk about how we go about creating hair for a character. Thank you.